From dawn to dusk, aim to the stars. And whenever you land somewhere nearby, even a little bit lower, you made it up there, unreachable. By your choice, beginning from a small step like this, all the way up there. Wherever humanity propels to new heights, wherever no one else had ever reached before. You made it up there by your choice. Every day. Till there. Hello everyone. This will be mainly about media literacy related to freedom of speech, expression and spoken word. What I had to say about that on 31st of March. Yet, for the intro, in the recent news, Elon acquired and become the largest shareholder of Twitter. And I believe this is a good move and service for people and freedom of speech. When you think about Twitter as the platform economy, there is that kind of sense that people are easily able to have a discussion even without revealing their identity or name. Yet, like it has been stated, one of the most annoying problems on Twitter is that it has been flooded with impersonating bots that are spreading questionable links and under every potentially viable thread of discussion, and thereby the good discussion is flooded, and perhaps not even seen. So I hope that Elon can really do something about that problem and help people to recognize what is and who is a verified human being and who is not. One of the solutions would be to make it easy for everyone to connect their profile and profile picture to Web3 wallet. That is one feature that Twitter has recently been testing out. But the problem is that if everyone doesn't have access to that feature, and if it's behind a paid service, then it is not really a service for everyone. Every effort must be made on Twitter to solve, first of all the spammy, bots, and second of all, to make it easy to verify a real human being. And I think it's a real cool way if you would be able to connect up your Web3 wallet and have some verified profile picture that is yet not so revealing, but it is still a commitment that you are potentially a human being. What comes to freedom of expression, especially in text form and spoken word, I have observed that the prevailing so-called sensitive culture is more inclined towards blaming or shaming or canceling people instead of having good conversations. So it is so sad that whenever there sparks up some discussion, it is often about some bad has happened. There is so wide disconnect to a good conversation culture. And what comes to taboos and the ongoing discussion, I think this gap has been a little bit, getting closer by memes. Because when you make a precise meme, you are potentially able to express about some matters which it would be otherwise, which otherwise would be hardly, expressed in the text form only, because in only text form it is so prone to deafness of tonality, and when it comes to media literacy and what is really meant in a short phrase that, like Twitter is, tweets are, it is really prone to these misinterpretations, misunderstandings, and that is why media literacy is actually the so-called forgotten skill set. At least when I was at high school, this was highlighted all the time. Media literacy is the number one skill set you must be able to have when internet is becoming the thing. But now it has become the thing, and yet people have so short attention spans they might not even recognize the context of what is meant, and they make a quick interpretation and misunderstand even themselves. So recognize what is comical, satire, or juxtaposition to truth with common illusions in status quo or the mainstream, which are often stereotypically expressed in a sense of humor. And, all that goes under the whole understanding what it means to have the skill set of media literacy. And when I say that literacy, it is also the ability to recognize the context in, or the tonality actually, the tonality in spoken word, because you know that it is completely different what kind of matters you may able to discuss on stage and expressing it in a form of comedy, in other words, spoken word. Anyways, these are really important matters to wonder and ponder when it comes to these platform economies. So here we go to 1 for media literacy. And here we go. These days, what comes to media literacy, what is so important to distinguish is the contextual understanding what is being spoken. How? Because if and when people interpreted anything what is said in a bad way, then they made a made-up narrative that something is being said, and then even if they made it up themselves, then they blame the messenger or whoever was speaking, they blame them for the made-up narrative what they made up themselves, that it is somehow negative. And what is even worse, even kids these days can do this. They made up a negative narrative, then they blame even if they themselves set up the action in a way they encouraged the action to something bad, to say something bad, and they themselves behaved badly. And then when somebody bites into the whatever narrative they are creating, then they blame the one. Then they blame whoever was there to even interact with them. And these days even kids do this, what is called gaslighting. And it's so important, I have always said that man must be very careful whoever he interacts with. There should not be a minute spent with people who mean and see only bad things, and so forth. So this one is about media literacy, and what is important to distinguish is the form of given speech. When there is, of course, a lot of content on these platforms or apps, but when a topic is spoken, when a topic is discussed in the form of spoken word, then usually the tonality is something between comedy or entertainment. Most likely spoken word or spoken discussion is somehow entertainment or edutainment at least. Whereas if you want to interpret some, very seriously, let's say, if you want to literally interpret something, that is where spoken word or spoken discussion or conversation is not sufficient, is not adequate for that. Instead, when you want to really dig deep what somebody means, you should read a book about that. Because in a book, you get the whole context of understanding what is meant and what is being said. And this is very important to note because it tends to be so common that somebody in a short clip, somebody says something, and then all the whatever negative vibe is in the audience, they take a little piece of that spoken context or spoken content and they interpret it in a totally nonsense way, what was not even meant, or they are tone deaf. They are deaf to the whole context what was said, and instead they take the little snippet of it and then start to make up their own generalizations according what was being said about the person who said it, as if it was only what they mean. No, that is all lack of media literacy. And I have seen that it is very common that there is the lack of media literacy, can people really exchange thoughts in the safe wavelength of understanding instead of acting out of competition against each other? And then there is that another paradigm where people are either in a competitive mindset against others, or they try to really understand what is being said and collaborate what is being said and participate to that in a meaningful way. But it's sad to observe that there is a huge lack of media literacy, lack of practical optimism in friendly manners, where communication could happen, but it does not, because there is because people see each other from the competitive mindset. Anyways, whenever you want to say something negative or bad about any type of snippet, clip, content, you should always justify your one phrase opinion or whatever you got to say. Justify it. Write an essay if you really want to see if there is something bad. Write an essay about it. Then find your reasons. Research. Do your research. And go from there. Because when the culture is too hectic, too fast, the attention span is too short, it laces out people. They are just throwing rubbish comments out there that mean absolutely nothing. And what's the use of that? Try to justify where you are coming from. And perhaps on the way, you most likely will learn something about the perspectives. Whatever matter is there about life, you can look it always from various perspectives, especially when you know the full context, what is meant there. So, if you want to read, if you want to understand, in that serious sense about somebody, I would recommend to read a book. The actual last day of March. Whoa, what a month it has been. Whoa, what a Wednesday it was. What night. And we go straight. By the way, today at 12 I wrote this kind of a post about media literacy. That is so important these days when people have less time to analyze the more content they browse through every day. So what happens is that the general attention span is low, thinner, and it kind of loosens the nerves to really stop for a moment and trying to understand some complex matter, whereas there is more and more complex matters out there. So, there comes the importance of, first of all, clear communication. Even memes may contextualize some understanding in simple form. Yet there comes the ability and skill to read through media literacy. And I have noticed that people have a lot of room for improvement in that ability. When I was at high school, it was highlighted all the time that you gotta be able to recognize different contexts and in that practical way to read them, whether it's satire or sarcasm or irony or comedy. A comedy might be combination of both, satire and even the juxtaposition of so-called mainstream status quo in contrast to the factual truths of biology, for example. And usually that truth, when it's presented in an eye-opening way, it might hurt at first. So there is that note I wrote at noon in a couple minutes about media literacy, and I think it's so relevant right now when we call into question freedom of speech, freedom of choice. Even the media itself has a lot of room for improvement in their literacy, because their workers are consisting of the same people in the mainstream, status quo. They kind of don't they don't have the moment to stop and really dig deeper into the contextual understanding what is freedom of speech even. That is called into question at Twitter. And by the way, I was surprised when I noticed this. The Twitter notification is pushing me, Well, first, this is relevant. Geniuses are often rejected by society. Guess why? Because they are afraid to receive those genius perspectives. So because truth hurts, so they don't have a capacity to dig deeper into them, and because they don't, they turn loosely into the laziness and reject the offered new perspective, fresh perspective. And there is the poll by Elon. Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? And I answered no. 70% said no out of over 2 million votes. And I mean, it's clear that these days these media platforms they cannot keep up to the principle of what it means to freely express opinions. And to be frank, most of people can't even express their views in open air because they are afraid of the pressure and criticism that is self-evident. This is obvious that you will be criticized when you publicly state your opinions, but that is why there is this human development of the knowledge, and knowledge requires strong leadership. We need stronger leadership in these key positions of media literacy, how it is defined and how it is handled. Because if you give weak, like all the platforms these days, which I have noticed to be in the mainstream, basically all of them have a huge lack in the leadership of how these principles are applied to the content. And it requires stronger leadership to lead that kind of power of knowledge. And from there begins to rise the tolerance for more transparent communication and more truthful communication, and and after all, it will be reflected into better media literacy. In other words, the ability to read media content, because the perspective is in each one's own mind and thoughts. And if you have the need to censorship some straight point of views, even in text form. There is something, because there's something shady. Because how can you even define what is right or wrong? How can you separate what is tolerated and what is not in text form? We are just talking about a speech here, normal speech. And if you cannot if these platforms don't have the means to increase the threshold for more transparent communication, then they need stronger leadership who is able to guide their workers to the practical optimism of transparent communication. It's all about leadership there, because in the end somebody gotta define the principles how the content is handled, and who that is in the leadership positions. But in the end, each of human being is in the leadership position of themselves, and they can see the content. They can see, if they want to, they can see what is bad, and if they want to, they can see what is good. And because it really requires media literacy in order to even survive throughout the content. That is why if people don't have the media literacy, then they don't flow, but they ebb towards their survival instincts and fears about whatever. And then again, when people don't have the ability of media literacy, then they themselves interpret something that was meant for good. They interpret it as bad. They twist it, they gaslight it, and they start to see enemies, and they are literally in war against their own coasts, against their own interpretations. Think about it. And that is all due to lack of media literacy abilities. So when they browse there, they start to categorize people, and they take things out of context. They don't apply the contextual understanding. What is the vibe there? What is the mood? So way too often I see that when there is posted a clip that is stitched to another mood or content or specific matter of whatever it is, then people judge the stitch, and they generalize that, oh, this is the opinion of this person, and now this person, because one thinks that way, they are this and that. And they categorize the person according to that one particular little piece of content that was a particular stitch to a particular mood, and they say their particular opinion about that moment, in the moment. And now suddenly there is the whole audience of people seeing something bad out of that particular clip, If I say that stay focused on developing yourself in a stitched moment when there is a party and a guy is doing push-ups on the side, that doesn't, even I say that, yeah, stay focused on yourself, keep going. That does not mean literally that I would mean that it is bad to go into the party. No, it's good. Have both sides of life. Do your exercise and have fun with people, socialize with people, do parties. But that is just an example how these days people are, they don't have media literacy abilities. So, and it might be also because these platforms which are handling daily information, they are not transparent in themselves. They are not transparent how their algorithms work, and when they are not known, then we cannot really see how their algorithms are censoring in real time people content. Because if they are, pushing one kind of content and then they are disregarding another kind of content, that is defining freedom of speech itself there. And whenever they see that somebody has gained followers, they still have the ability to shadow ban those people so that their algorithm doesn't push the content of that person to the stream. However, when somebody breaks a really, really big personality, like tens of millions followers, then the algorithm kind of loses its effectiveness, because there are so many people who organically follow that person and they will retweet their tweets anyway. But that is those persons are only exceptions to the rule, whereas still these media platforms can absolutely control at least over 80% of people's content, what they see, by just defining the algorithm whatever they want to. Most of people have under 10,000 followers, at least under 50,000 followers, most of people, and they can be completely under the unfair censorship and unfair definitions for restricted freedom of speech. And that is why perhaps all of these media platforms today will go to bankruptcy. And because there is definitely demand for stronger principles in these internationally claimed rights to freedom of speech, rights to freedom of choice. And if somebody does their freedom of speech and choices better than somebody else, of course, that might be so competitive that people get hurt, in other words, jealous, in the hypersensitive culture that is so bored for all the negativity that is floating there. But each sensible and knowledgeable person can do something about it, and it is up to their choices to develop more stronger. Lastly, here we go. Just to take a quick look, we continue. Sounds good. Studying. Oh, did I talk something about studies? The dilemma is that when people graduate from primary school and they start high school, they should already kind of know, if they want to be optimal, they should already kind of know where they want to continue their studies after high school. But many don't. Most of people don't know. And I feel like these days less and less people know where they really want to go. So I'm just curious about these kind of vibes. Always, education is always relevant. I'm always curious about education and human nature, how is it developing. So, yep, maybe also for you, you're starting to figure out where you want to study or work in the future. That is, I'm just curious. Then there was the other person. I pandered about the lightweight activities. They just say, aha. The categories of lightweight activities which are inspiring, like food, arts, sports, they can continue the list. At least they open it right away. Perhaps they can't. That is media literacy once again. That defines how you are able to participate into the context and the understanding that is unfolding within it. If someone is talking about completely different upon completely different level of contextual understanding about a matter, and another person doesn't get it, and they start to talk about something completely about something else, there is no connection, as obvious as it is. So think about all these matters. These at first, at a glimpse, these sounds like basics, but these are like, once again, the saying goes that often people need more reminders of knowledge, not new knowledge. Also, you have probably heard all kinds of wisdom of the world, but how much you can apply that into practice in your day life, that is what matters really. If you remember or not, if you are able to breathe life into those essential pieces of wisdom, that is what matters. That is what makes net worth, so forth. I mean the mental, spiritual net worth, the mental capital, how they say, or social capital, how you like to define it. Fascinating how also it matters whether a for an example, a comedian is a known famous person or not. If they are famous and they are then given the leeway and the somehow they are handed the keys to talk about very roasty and even triggering topics of humanity. But if somebody who is not known, they talk about pretty normal conversation, and then suddenly this normal person is getting blamed for their expressing their opinions, whereas these popular comedians, they are cheered, they're like, yay, that was funny. And you really got that is also media how you judge others. Like if you hand the demonstrations that free speech and freedom of judgment, but then in your day life you are judging a comedian completely upon different criteria, where you judge your persons who lives nearby. You really gotta be careful upon these principles, and it also matters whether a person how basic this is. It also matters whether the comedian is a man or a woman. Usually, a woman is given even more leeway to talk all kind of BS comedy about other people, and still it is viewed to be funny. Whereas some men comedians, they have been basically cancelled because they made some kind of triggering comedy or whatever. So think about these matters. These are super important because how people live and believe in the mainstream status quo. It is almost similar to the lesson of the story of the emperor's new clothes. Because if people are not able to recognize the content through their ability to media literacy, if they don't have media abilities, then they are cheering to the emperor that has no clothes on. And they are cheering that, oh, this fancy tech is so nice. But they don't see that, hey, there is something, shady going on underneath. There are the where is the truth really? that is these classical, sometimes these classical stories which were written hundreds and hundreds years ago, they can be applied to the phenomenon happening today. If I would be asked, I could make a class about this. Let me know. We are here learning more every day. With these thoughts, time flies. Till the next time. So here we go. Before the evening dinner, just a real quick look at a snap track. Yep. Little by little, step by step, small step at a time. Where better they are figuring out where they wanna study and so forth. So, yep, it's quite a rarer and rarer know their direction. And then the another chat about the activities, food tastes, not in the list of daily matters to do, of course. Daily activities, yeah, food. Till the next time, gonna eat some now.